One thing fixed and another problem appears. That's the reality of a fresh drift build. After getting a 335D suspension dialed in, it seems now that the clutch can't keep up with the M57's torque. This has to be one of the hardest parts of building a drift car. Dialing it in and ironing out all the little kinks after a fresh build. When we finally got the manual swap 335D drift build on track, we quickly ran into issues. First the radiator failed, then we had the fuel leak, and if you've been following along, you know that the soft suspension that still wasn't dialed in was a big role in us crashing. We continue to have issue after issue on the track, keeping us in the pits. If you watched our first video of drifting the 335D for the first time, you saw our struggles with the soft suspension and how it would make the car react. And so we really needed to fix that. We did get new springs put in it. They are higher spring rate springs. We went all the way up to 16 Ks all the way around, and it completely changed how the car drove. It feels much more planted. There's not as much body roll. And with us not having sway bars, it transitions the weight a lot better. So the car is more predictable and it's easier to handle. It's still a handful, but it's a lot easier and we're going in the right direction. You can even see a big difference side by side of how the car reacts. And now we're picking up the front end, we're doing three wheeling around corners, and it makes for great photos. We have new springs, and those are working out great, but another key aspect of that is aligning the car. When we built this car, we built it with especially the wise fab in the rear, but also up front. The rear, I wanted the adjustability, and a lot of people say that we don't need grip and the wise fab is overkill, and in some ways it can be overkill, but with this build I wanted that adjustment, and this kit gives you all the adjustment, and it's kind of overwhelming if you're not used to it. But once you do get that set up like we have with this car, we can always add more grip. These cars are already mechanically pretty gripped up with the 5-link suspension in the rear, and we can adjust toe curve and everything. So when I get on throttle and it squats, it actually toes in and digs out of things that I wanted to dig out of. I've had that observation from a lot of the passengers that have been in the car. Whenever I get on throttle, it just hooks and goes. So I really like that about the car. It's still pretty gripped up, but I have the power, I have the torque for it, so I don't feel like it's too gripped for the power level. But finding that balance between too much grip and the predictability, the handling, so you can still handle that car. You can be too gripped up for your power level. And so I think we're finding that balance with this car. And a lot of what made me crash or made the mistake of allowing me to crash was the unpredictability of how gripped up it was before, and with the softer springs, how it would weight transition. And that's what essentially made the car just snap straight and just go straight. So now I have a lot more predictability with that. So the alignment's changed a lot, and I don't think that the Wise Fab was overkill, and I think that it's going to only allow me to grow farther into this car and adjust my driving even more with it in the future. Now, when you have a fuel leak, that's a pretty serious thing, especially with gas powered. More so with diesel, you have a little bit more leeway, but fuel leak is still a serious thing. So we had a fuel leak on one of the injectors, and at high RPMs, it would seep and create a puddle, and then eventually that would go on the back of the engine or the exhaust manifold. So we had to fix that. Pretty easy diagnosis, I guess, but there's a return line and a feed line. With this being common rail injection, there's a lot of pressure on that feed line. So I addressed the return line to make sure it wasn't that, replaced the O-rings on that, still had the same issue. And so what I did was I took the feed line off, and the way it was seated before, something wasn't happy, or maybe there was a piece of dirt or something in there, but I pulled that apart, cleaned it, and then reset it, and we haven't had any issues since then. So that was a relatively easy fix, thankfully, and no leaks whatsoever on the fuel side. Now, another thing that people have commented about is turbo lag, and thinking that I have to wait 3 to 5 business days before my boost comes in, and that's just not the case. So with this bi-turbo setup, the small turbo is, I mean, it's right there, 1,000, 1,500 RPM, and we're already making usable boost. And then right after that tops out, the large turbo comes in. So it's very minimal lag. I have other turbo diesel cars, obviously, trucks, the Ranger, that has turbo lag. This car does not really have turbo lag. It lights up pretty quick, and even if I'm under the turbos, no boost, and I'm 2,500 RPM in a drift, the car still has no problem using that torque and then waiting for that boost to come on. The car is driving how I was hoping it would drive, using that diesel torque, but then able to have that top end with the boost. I still have a very small RPM range to work with, but it's a very enjoyable car and makes for fun driving. So from the start of this build, one of my main concerns was a clutch. And I mentioned it before in other videos, and it's a main reason why these manual swaps on these cars are more difficult to do than, say, other cars. The other big thing, and this is probably the biggest issue with, one, drifting this car, and two, really manual swapping any 335D in the States, at least a like tuned and deleted one. They make more power than one ZF even rated that 6-speed manual transmission for. Same thing goes for the clutch setup. Getting one to handle a lot of torque is somewhat difficult. I'm not sure if it's the size of the clutch, because these are 8 to 10 inch size clutch depending on what company you go with. So they're a decent sized clutch, but holding the torque of these 3-liter diesels seems to be a tall task for clutches. This car is no different, and holding that torque has been a difficult thing for this car, especially if I'm in a higher gear and I have extra load on the clutch and using all of that torque. I really have issues with the current setup that's in this car. So we have some slipping of the clutch when it's on high loads. Other issues is, especially with a twin disc, you need that floater disc in between your clutch discs to kind of move so that you can fully disengage. Well, I don't think that that's happening fully. I don't know if there's just a bunch of clutch material in there that's keeping it from doing it, but that is an issue that I'm trying to remedy. And we've been in talks with the manufacturer of this clutch to find the best solution moving forward for this car. I'll update you guys on that as that comes along, and then we find the best solution for these manual swaps so that they can handle the abusive drifting. And if they can handle that, then I'm sure they could handle daily driving or other motorsports that people would want to do with these cars. Now, I know that this struggle goes to other people that have manual swap these cars as well. And it's really tempting with these struggles for finding a clutch that can handle all this abuse and torque that something like an 8 HP is super tempting. A lot of people that 8 HP swap these cars don't have the same issues that I'm having. As long as they can figure out tuning, then it's a great setup. Now, that's tempting, but I really want to see this GS6, the manual trans that we put in this, see it through and to find a solution for this. Even if the long-term goal of this car would be an 8 HP, I would like to find a clutch setup that I can suggest to other 335D manual or cars swapped with this setup that can handle this abuse and be able to go that route. So we're not going to do an 8 HP, although very tempting. We're going to see this through and find a clutch setup that works really good for this. Now, we are working with the manufacturer of this clutch to find a solution, but if you have experience with these 335Ds with manuals or BMWs in general or diesels in general, and you know of a clutch that might be able to handle the abuse and the torque, let us know in the comments, and we'd love to look into that as maybe another solution either for this car or another car to be able to test out and share our thoughts on that. So with these clutch issues, it really doesn't like third gear on our specific local track, which is a kart track, so it's smaller. And I was normally in third gear for most of the first few events that we drove with this car. I'd have a little bit higher tire pressure in the rear, and I'd use third gear. And the clutch really didn't like that. So this last event, I bumped it down to second gear and dropped my tire pressure. And that worked out really well. And the clutch was able to handle that a lot better. I did have to change how I drove and where I shifted because there is still a spot in our track that you relatively need third unless I want to sit on limiter for a while, which I didn't want to do that. So I would shift to third very scarcely in that, which was difficult with that floater disc not fully disengaging. It was kind of sketchy going from third to second, and a couple times I even missed it because the disc wouldn't let go, and I basically was locked out of every gear. That's super fun, but again, we're figuring that out. I was just able to change how I set up the car with varying tire pressures in the rear, and then what gear I was able to use, and then I was actually able to enjoy the car for more than I thought I would with that event. It wasn't even supposed to go to that event, but I wanted more testing to be able to share with the clutch company the issues that we're having and to find a solution. And so we loaded it up, and I ended up driving that car more than I did the Mustang. So of course there's got to be something that takes out this car so that I can't finish the entire event, and that's okay. This time it was just a power steering line of all things. I had a high pressure PTFE line for this power steering system, but it didn't hold up to the pressure or the temperature. I do have a cooler on the system, but it didn't like that, so it ended up blowing apart midday on the last day, and I was able to fix it at the track to where I could get it on the trailer. but I didn't want to push it anymore, and it was a super simple fix when I would get home because I could just have a new line made, but I didn't have all that at the track. So I hopped in the Mustang and got used to that because they drive very differently. Got used to that and was able to finish out the event and had a lot of fun. So there's always stuff to dial in further on this car, and so we have a small list for this car, mainly starting with suspension. Now we have the new springs in there, and it dialed in a lot, but I'm at the top of what the valving for these shocks can handle, and I'd also like to play with the idea of getting some sway bars on this car, which in the rear is not just a simple bolt-on solution. So we need to figure out something for that. If I wanted to get a sway bar on the front and rear of this car, I'm not a huge fan of the ride height, and I'd like to mess around with that and a few other things. So that's something to think about and maybe develop later on. And then the damage from going into the wall, I still have yet to fix that. Thankfully, I fix dents for a living, so I'm going to take the challenge on saving the fender, the two doors, and the quarter panel on this car, and to get rid of the scratches as much as possible. Eventually, this car will have a livery on it, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to take the challenge on, and I'll share that with you guys as well. And with anything on a BMW, when you change something, a lot of sensors and stuff get a little mad at you. So this has a small Christmas tree of lights on the dash that I'd really like to get rid of. So we have to play around with coding and learn how to code this car correctly to get rid of, airbag stuff and traction control stuff, TPMS sensors, random little things that really don't affect the car on how it drives. It's just annoying to get in, and we've done all this work to this car, and I just want that last little bit to be finalized and finished up. And getting the kinks worked out of this car, all the small things figured out, is enjoyable. It can be annoying, but with any fresh build, once we get through these growing pains, getting all the kinks worked out, getting the car to drive how I want it to, I'm only going to enjoy it more. I absolutely love driving this car right now, and so I'm just excited to see where it goes from here and building the car into something that's even more capable and that my driving can grow into and just get better and better. So really looking forward to that. And again, if you guys have comments on the clutch, or if you have any questions in regards to the rest of the build, check out our other videos. We have a full playlist, and if it's not covered in there, leave a comment, ask us, and we'll do our best to respond. Don't forget to subscribe. We have more coming out on this car. This isn't going anywhere, so we're going to continue to develop this and change some things up on the car. So hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon so that you know when we have another video coming out and you can be the first to watch it. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.